I stood at the counter with my own bank card in my hand. The woman behind it looked at me like I already knew something I didn't. I didn't. My name is Ronald Spear. I'm 70. Retired schoolteacher, Richmond, Virginia. That Tuesday morning was the first thread I pulled on something that had been unraveling for months, right under my nose. Is there a problem? I asked. My card was still in my hand. A line was forming behind me. The manager glanced at her screen. Her face went careful. Mr. Spear, your daughter froze this account herself. Last week. My daughter did what? She paused a beat too long. Then she said it plain. Your daughter has power of attorney. It's on file. Filed 4 months ago. My ears started ringing. None of this lined up with anything I remembered agreeing to. I never gave Denise power of attorney over anything. Her face shifted again. Sir, the document's on file. Dated back in June. June. Something cold settled in my stomach. June was the month I fell down my own porch steps. 3 days in the hospital. Groggy. Confused. In and out of sleep. Denise at my bedside almost the whole time. I asked for a copy of that paperwork. She said she'd need Denise's consent to release it, since Denise was listed as my agent. I stood there a moment, trying to understand how a piece of paper could exist that gave someone else power over my own name, without me ever seeing it myself. I left that bank with nothing resolved, and a feeling in my chest I hadn't felt since the week my wife passed. I drove straight to my old friend Walter's house instead of going home. Walter spent years as a hospital patient advocate before he retired. He always knew the right questions to ask. Ronald, you sound rattled, he said, opening the door before I finished knocking. What's going on? I told him everything. The frozen account. The paperwork I didn't remember signing. The timing, lining up almost exactly with those 3 foggy days in the hospital back in June. Walter went quiet for a long moment. Ronald, when you're in a hospital bed, groggy, on pain medication, signing whatever's put in front of you because someone you trust says it's routine, that's not the same as understanding what you're agreeing to. If Denise had you sign something during that stay, we need to see exactly what it says. And exactly when. Walter helped me request my hospital records the next morning. It took 2 days. I spent that time replaying those 3 blurry days over and over, trying to remember anything beyond the ceiling tiles and the sound of the machines. Buried among the discharge papers and routine consent forms was a single page. It authorized my daughter as my agent for financial decisions in the event of incapacity. Signed on the 2nd day of my stay. My signature shaky, uneven, nothing like it looks when I'm actually myself. I sat with Walter at his kitchen table, staring at that signature. I couldn't remember signing it. Not the pen. Not the moment. Not a single word anyone said to me about what I was putting my name to. Once I started looking back, things I'd let slide before started standing out. Denise had taken over more of my bills right after I got home. Just until you're back on your feet. She'd asked, gently, more than once, whether I'd thought about simplifying things, moving somewhere smaller, closer to her. Her husband, Alan, had been out of work over a year, and their conversations always seemed to circle back to money whenever I was in the room, dressed up as concern. I remembered catching Denise on the phone in my hallway a few weeks back. Her voice dropped low the second she saw me. I'll call you back, once things settle down. I hadn't thought much of it then. It sat differently in my memory now. Walter connected me with an elder law attorney he trusted, a calm, direct woman named Fatima Rashid. She reviewed everything within the hour. Mr. Spear, this document is shaky at best. Signed while medicated, recovering, with no witness confirming you understood what you were signing. It can be challenged. But first, we need to know what's actually been done with that authority since June. Fatima suggested I let Denise believe I hadn't noticed anything yet. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, sitting through a phone call with her 2 days later, listening to her ask how I was feeling, whether I'd been keeping up with my walks, while that shaky signature sat scanned into a file on Fatima's desk. Fatima's investigator pulled the full transaction history. Over 4 months, more than $19,000 had moved out in smaller transfers, labeled vaguely as household expenses. The money hadn't gone to Denise. It had gone into an account belonging to Alan. I thought back to the hold placed on my account the week before. That was right around the same time I'd mentioned, at a family dinner, wanting to check my own statements myself, now that I was feeling stronger. I wondered if that timing was really an accident. 2 weeks later, Denise and Alan came for Sunday dinner, same as always. Walter helped me set up a small recorder in an old radio on my kitchen counter, the same spot where every serious conversation in that house had happened for decades. After dinner, I stepped out to the garage for firewood and left my phone recording on the counter. I listened from just outside the door. "He wants to check the statements himself now," Alan said. "That's why I told you to freeze it. Buy us time. He won't remember signing anything from the hospital," Denise said, quieter than I expected. "He never really remembers much from that week." "And if it comes up?" Alan asked. "It won't," Denise said. "He doesn't even think to ask these kinds of questions anymore. Once things are settled, none of this will matter." I stood in my own garage, a piece of firewood in my hand, listening to my daughter talk about me like I was already fading, using the worst 3 days of my recent life to explain away everything that came after. I don't think I've ever felt colder standing in my own house. Fatima had the recording filed as evidence within 2 days, along with the hospital records and the transaction history. She moved to formally revoke the power of attorney and asked the court to freeze any further transfers while it was all investigated properly. At the hearing, 6 weeks later, the judge reviewed the circumstances of the signing, the transfers into Alan's account, and the recording. It didn't take long. The power of attorney was revoked entirely. Full control of my account came back to me. The judge referred the matter to the district attorney's office to determine whether the pattern of transfers amounted to criminal financial exploitation of an elder. Denise was charged with financial exploitation and undue influence in procuring the power of attorney. She pled guilty. Probation, plus a restitution order for the full $19,000. Alan, found to have directed several of the transfers into his own account, faced separate charges and got the harsher sentence, 14 months, since the court found he'd been pushing the plan from the start. It's been almost a year now. Denise and I are slowly working through what's left between us. Careful conversations. Honest ones, at least, which is more than we used to manage. She and Alan separated a few months after the charges were filed. She's mentioned wanting to properly apologize someday, once she feels like she's earned it. Last week, I sat down at that same bank, at a small table near the counter, and signed one final paper. It wasn't a withdrawal. It was the document permanently removing my daughter's name from every account I own. Just my own signature now. Steady. Fully mine. Exactly the way it should have been all along. Walter still checks in on me most weeks, same as he always has. Some mornings, thinking back on that hospital bed and that shaky signature, I still feel a flash of that same cold fear from the day the manager first told me my own money wasn't mine to touch. But mostly now, standing in my own kitchen, it just feels like mine again. Which is more than I thought I'd get to say. If this story got to you, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one.